The phone call from Linz, Austria, arrived at 3 a.m. in Mallorca. Rafael Nadal, the 22-time Grand Slam champion, answered expecting an update about his academy, the young athletes he mentors, or the peaceful routine of retired life. Instead, the news instantly brought him fully awake. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open, a WTA 500 tournament with a 35-year history, was facing a major crisis. Ticket sales had plunged, sponsors were threatening to walk away, and according to the anxious tournament director, the explanation was straightforward: Alex Eala was missing from the event. The 20-year-old Filipina had failed to make the main draw after her ranking slipped from number 29 to number 45 following a heavy defeat to Karolina Muchova at the Miami Open. The tournament, which had counted heavily on her drawing power, suddenly faced serious financial trouble. Now the sponsors, the very companies that had watched her merchandise outsell every other player in Miami, were insisting the WTA step in. Their message was unmistakable: give Eala a wild card or risk losing millions. And when Nadal learned what followed, even the King of Clay was left speechless. April 2026. Linz, Austria. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open was expected to be a celebration. The event was marking its 35th edition, a significant achievement for any WTA tournament. Previous champions including Ekaterina Alexandrova and Yelena Ostapenko were scheduled to headline the competition. Prize money had risen by more than $140,000 compared with the previous season. Everything appeared set for another successful year. Then the ticket reports arrived, and excitement quickly turned into concern. Tournament organizers had forecast strong attendance based on recent editions, but once advance sales were counted, the picture became alarming. Ticket purchases had fallen by more than 40% compared with the year before. Sessions that previously sold out, the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship match, were only about half occupied. The event suddenly faced financial losses that could threaten its long-term future. Everyone inside the meeting room understood the reason. The Eala effect, which had overwhelmed ticket systems in Miami and produced a 48% attendance increase in Dubai, was completely absent in Linz. Alex Eala, the 20-year-old Filipina who had become one of the biggest attractions in women's tennis, was not part of the main draw. Her ranking had slipped from number 29 to number 45 after her fourth-round defeat against Karolina Muchova at the Miami Open. Without her presence, the supporters who had packed arenas from Melbourne to Miami simply never arrived. Tournament officials could not ignore the irony. They had invested 35 years building relationships with regional sponsors and media outlets. They poured resources into marketing campaigns, player development initiatives, and improvements to the venue. Yet none of those efforts seemed to matter. Spectators had not purchased tickets because of the tournament itself. They had come to watch Alex Eala. And without her on the schedule, many simply stayed home. The sponsors' meeting had originally been expected to follow its normal routine. Reviewing financial performance, discussing future plans, and handling the standard corporate business surrounding a WTA event. But once the attendance figures appeared on screen, the atmosphere immediately changed. Sponsors had spent months following the Eala phenomenon. They had witnessed Dubai's 48% ticket increase. They had seen Miami's ticketing system buckle under overwhelming demand from Filipino supporters. They had studied merchandise reports showing Eala's apparel outselling every other player's products combined. Their conclusion was simple: Eala generated revenue. The Linz tournament, with relatively modest attendance and an aging fan base, was no longer producing the return sponsors had expected. They wanted explanations. When tournament officials explained that Eala's ranking had fallen and she therefore was absent from the main draw, the reaction came instantly. "Get her into the tournament," one sponsor representative reportedly insisted. "We don't care how, wild card, special exemption, whatever is necessary. If she's not competing, we're not funding." That ultimatum sent shockwaves throughout the tournament organization. WTA regulations were straightforward. Wild cards were awarded at the discretion of tournament organizers, but they were generally reserved for local players or promising talents who had not yet qualified through rankings. Eala, sitting at world number 45, normally would not receive one under those guidelines. But these circumstances were far from ordinary. The tournament faced a financial emergency. Sponsors were threatening to leave, and the only player capable of filling the stadium had been excluded because her ranking had fallen. The WTA suddenly found itself trapped in an impossible situation. The regulations were clear. Wild cards existed for players who had missed direct qualification through rankings. Eala, ranked number 45, did not qualify under ordinary conditions. Yet nothing about the situation was ordinary. The Linz Open faced severe financial losses. Sponsors were prepared to withdraw. Ticket demand had collapsed, while the one player capable of bringing packed crowds remained outside the draw because of a ranking system that did not account for commercial appeal. Reports indicated that discussions inside WTA headquarters quickly became heated and deeply divided. Some officials believed the regulations should be enforced no matter the outcome. Others argued those rules existed to benefit the sport, and if they were now harming it, they deserved to be reconsidered. The rankings are not the only way to measure a player's importance, one anonymous official reportedly told reporters. Alex Eala has demonstrated that she can pack stadiums, move merchandise, and bring entirely new audiences into tennis. That carries real value, and the WTA has to find a way to acknowledge it, whether through wild cards, adjusted seedings, or even broader changes to the ranking structure. When the decision finally arrived, it was unlike anything seen before. The WTA confirmed that Alex Eala would receive a wild card into the Linz Open main draw. The official announcement pointed to exceptional circumstances and recognized her significant role in expanding the popularity of women's tennis. The decision immediately sparked criticism in some circles. Opponents argued the WTA was stretching its own guidelines to accommodate a player who had not qualified through ranking alone. Others viewed it as a practical response to an evolving sport. The Eala phenomenon had already become a frequent topic throughout the tennis community, but the Linz situation pushed the discussion into completely new territory. Why had one player's participation become so important to a tournament's financial health? Marketing analysts had been pointing toward the same explanation for months: connection. For millions within the Filipino diaspora, Alex Eala represents far more than a professional tennis player. She symbolizes possibility. She demonstrates that a young athlete from Manila can compete on the biggest stages in the world and belong there. She reflects the dream that dedication, sacrifice, and perseverance can lead to extraordinary achievements. Earlier in the season, one experienced umpire observed, when players come from countries like the Philippines, the atmosphere feels like a Davis Cup tie. Fans aren't simply cheering for an individual, they're supporting their nation. That emotional bond translates directly into business. In Dubai, ticket sales climbed 48% with Eala in the field. In Miami, merchandise bearing her name outsold every other players combined. In Linz, without her, the tournament suddenly faced serious financial uncertainty. The numbers spoke for themselves. Eala's presence generated millions through ticket purchases, merchandise, sponsorship value, and worldwide exposure. Her absence carried an equally significant financial cost. After years of searching for ways to expand the sport, the WTA had finally found a player capable of driving remarkable commercial growth. The challenge was figuring out how to manage that reality. For Alex Eala, the Linz Open wild card represented much more than access to another tournament. It served as recognition. It reinforced that her contribution to the sport extended well beyond ranking points. Her position had fallen from world number 29 to number 45 following her fourth-round defeat to Karolina Muchova at the Miami Open. The 390 ranking points earned during her memorable 2025 semi-final run had now disappeared from her total. Ahead lay a demanding clay-court schedule: Linz, Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros. The challenges would be significant. Slower courts. Higher bouncing balls. Longer exchanges. Greater patience and tactical discipline than hard courts usually require. Yet she carried something impossible to measure through rankings alone, the unwavering support of an entire nation willing to follow her anywhere. In Linz, Eala would enter as the tournament's 7th seed, behind players including Alexandrova, Tauson, Samsonova, Ostapenko, Navarro, and Raducanu. She would face competitors with greater clay court experience, players who had already captured titles on the surface and arrived with proven credentials. But she would also possess something many of them could not match, the backing of thousands of Filipino supporters who had traveled across Europe to watch her compete. "I could win the entire tournament or lose my opening match," Eala said during a podcast conversation with former world number 1 Andy Roddick. "If I don't get the victory here, I'll find it somewhere else." Those are the words of someone determined to keep improving. And with the wild card secured, she now has another opportunity to prove exactly that. The Linz Open had reached the edge of a financial crisis. Ticket demand had dropped sharply. Sponsors were considering pulling their support. Tournament officials believed the explanation was straightforward: Alex Eala was absent. The 20-year-old Filipina had slipped from world number 29 to number 45 after her difficult loss to Karolina Muchova at the Miami Open. Without her in the field, many of the supporters who had packed venues from Melbourne to Miami simply stayed away. The tournament suddenly faced losses that threatened its future. Then the sponsors intervened. In a remarkable move, they urged the WTA to award Eala a wild card into the main draw. Their message could not have been clearer: put her in the tournament or risk losing our support. Facing mounting pressure, the WTA ultimately agreed. Rafael Nadal, who has worked with Eala at his academy for 7 years, watched the situation unfold from Mallorca. "I've never witnessed a tournament's financial future depend upon a player who isn't even in the draw," he reportedly said. "It's something we've never seen before." Now, as Eala prepares for the clay swing through Linz, Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros, she carries something no ranking formula can fully capture. She knows her importance to the sport reaches beyond numbers. The struggles against Czech opponents remain unresolved. Her clay court resume is still developing. Yet she possesses something stronger than statistics alone: the support of an entire nation that continues standing behind her. Was the WTA justified in awarding Alex Eala a wild card into the Linz Open? Share your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe now for daily WTA news, match analysis, and stories that go far beyond the final score.